And we are on the air. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Red Room. Tonight, I have handouts for you, and they're online. You can download them. And so I gave you this little message. Notice them, and if you can, print them out for yourself so that you can read along with me, and also it helps you ask questions about them. So previously, we've been looking at communication and relationships and what a deep friendship in a relationship needs. Tonight, we're going to look at emotional self-regulation. And we've had quite some good questions about emotional self-regulation having to do with honesty and anger and how to calm yourself down. So tonight I brought you some very specific pieces so that you can say, I get it, and I know what to do instead. So anytime you have a question, please type it to me. I'm always interested in what your insight is, what your questions are, how it is that you can personalize this for you and your relationships. So here we go. The first handout that you have looks like this, the first download. And this is, I title it Emotional Manipulation, 5 Controlling Defense Patterns. And casually, like I typed, I do my very best to make these unattractive to us. And so I call it 5 styles of throwing tantrums. And you and I know that tantrums are for about, terrible 2s, 3s, 4s, until a child learns that tantrums don't work. Unless their parents don't know what to do instead and tantrums do work. Now, we don't want tantrums to work in a relationship, especially an intimate relationship. So these are 5 controlling defense patterns, which means trying to control the situation, somebody else, and try to manipulate them to get what you want. And manipulation is, the way I figure it, manipulation is underhanded. And I'm not interested in somebody telling me what to do, forcing me to do something, tricking me, going behind my back, playing a sob story when they really just want to get me to feel the way they want me to feel so that they can get what they want to get. And I don't know about you, if there are sometimes movies that are made by the less than best professionals or directors, and when I feel emotionally manipulated by the story, I immediately check out and I'm not with it. So let's look at these 5 controlling defense patterns. And I call it games people play. And I don't know about you, but I don't like it when people play games, and I definitely don't want people to play games without my permission. Here's a question. I used to think that yelling would always let me have my ways. Yes, and with some people it works, doesn't it? And children find out that either it works or it doesn't work, and if it works, well, you're going to keep doing it, right? So yelling with civilized people just gives them a measure of how good you are at solving problems, and they're going to just wait until you calm down so that they can actually get something done. So here we go. There are 5 different patterns. Games people play. Those who approach difficulties with a need to control avoid accountability. They want to avoid accountability. They don't want to take the blame. They don't want to take responsibility. Or they want to avoid guilt. Or they want to protect themselves because this is a situation where they haven't figured out how to communicate or solve problems yet. Or they are taken over by their feelings. They may use these defensive roles. As time goes on, it can become manipulative with various detriments to relationships, and that's any kind of relationship, whether it's with a child or a boss or a spouse or an older parent or your best friend. So as time goes on, these defense patterns or intention to control can become manipulative and in various ways detriments to relationships. The other person may see it as game playing, irresponsible, untrustworthy, disrespectful, and or abusive. Those who use these emotional patterns learned to be defensive in childhood based on finding themselves in positions of compromise, submission, or powerlessness. And therefore, I call it the victim strategy model. So the victim strategy model has these 5 ways that we use tantrums to try to get what we want. Doesn't really work too well because this comes from someone who, know it or not, is playing a victim, and it comes from their frustration plus a lack of control or feeling powerless, feeling like a victim, with a lack of problem-solving abilities. That equals anger and tantrums. So, at the top, let's look at the top one first. This is the caretaker. This is the person who is the doormat, the pleaser, the person that will do anything, even compromise their own integrity to do whatever somebody else wants. They try to control with pleasing, rescuing, or seduction. They repress hostility, and their repressed hostility becomes depression because they refuse to act on their own account, and they look just to do what is going to please somebody else so that they can feel safe or manipulate that person to like them or give them what they're looking for. This caretaker takes toxic shame and guilt. So they're looking at, there's something wrong, well, tell me what I did, or tell me what I need to do so that I can take care of it, or I can give you what you want, or I can please you, or I can keep you from getting angry, or I can keep from getting hurt again, which means I am taking all of the blame, and I'm taking guilt, irrational guilt, too much guilt, because I'm just looking to control the situation by getting approval and pleasing somebody. So that kind of a quote-unquote tantrum is the manipulation is pleasing, and they end up being depressed because they haven't used their energy to solve a problem. Okay, so that's the caretaker. Now, the second one is called the martyr. This person is self-pitying. They are guilting, which means, again, they are saying, well, I'm going to take all the blame. I'm going to be the guilty one. And poor me, I'm the one that always has to do whatever it is. And so I'm going to work on your sympathies to get you to do what I want you to do. They play poor little old me. I give everything. I go the extra mile. Nobody ever takes care of me. They complain, but they refuse mentoring. They refuse suggestions or any possible solutions. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody like that who plays the martyr and complains? Now, not necessarily all martyrs do this, but people who complain and then they have a yabbit for every suggestion, every possibility, every way out that people around them are offering. They're always saying, well, no, that won't work. And no, I can't do that. No, I'm not willing to do that. No, that won't work. And they've painted themselves into a corner all by themselves before anybody else came along. So they're invested in being a martyr in the victim sense. And martyrs usually are victims. And sometimes they're, Joan of Arc was a genuine victim and genuine martyr, not because she was whining and complaining, but because, as you all know, she was standing up for her integrity and her honor and what she believed in. But the martyr who does this in a self-pitying or toxic way, they refuse looking at solutions. So this is, again, a victim strategy. Okay, kind of serious. And they end up being the whiner, whining. So the caretaker gets depressed, the martyr whines. Then we have the withdrawer. The withdrawer ends up pouting. The withdrawer is the person who, instead of solving the problem, they isolate, they shut down, they refuse to talk, and they are, in the purest sense, passive-aggressive, because they control the situation, they manipulate the situation to get what they want by refusing to engage or refusing to show up, refusing to talk, refusing to interact. And they, what we call stonewall, which means just shut themselves out and refuse to say anything, refuse to interact or talk. And so that's pouting. That's the third kind of tantrum. Okay, now we're going to look at the fourth out of 5 tantrums. This one is the insulter. Now this one doesn't take blame. This one blames others. So this person is judgmental, and they're pointing the finger of blame, saying, well, something's wrong, it's all your fault. And guess what? When they play it's all your fault, the blame game in that way, they, by default, are putting themselves into the victim role just as much as the pleaser is. So notice there's a continuum. On one end of the continuum, there's the pleaser that plays victim and will do anything you want. And then on the other end of the continuum, there's the blamer who plays victim, says, it's not my fault. If there's something wrong, well, then you need to take care of it, or somebody else needs to take care of it, because I'm not taking any blame. I'm not taking any responsibility. And so they become judgmental. They criticize other people. They harass others with insults, or just do it in their own minds. They call names, they blame, they deflect responsibility with accusations and put-downs. And they end up in a place, their tantrum is internal, and that's people who hate, or people who hold hatred. And you know that old saying, somebody that holds that kind of stubborn revenge or blame, hatred inside them, it's like going to the druggist to get poison for somebody else because you hate them so much, and then taking the poison yourself, because we all know that holding on to hatred is poisoning your own system. So this person is a victim by being insulting and hateful. Okay, so that's the fourth tantrum, the person who holds hate. Now the fifth tantrum is the dominator. This person, the tantrum they go into is the one that we typically think about, which is rage, or yelling and screaming and breaking things or hurting things and people. So the dominator blames and controls through intimidation. They are a coercive bully or a tyrant. They control through threats. They use force, drama, and rage to manipulate other people to get them to do what they want. Because after all, they're saying, I'm the victim. You need to take care of this. It's not my fault, not my responsibility, and I'm not going to do this. So there you have it. Those are the 5 ways that people throw tantrums and try to emotionally manipulate others to get them to do what they want them to do. Whether it's the caretaker that pleases, the martyr that whines, the withdrawer that shuts down, stonewalls, and pouts, the insulter who hates and plans revenge, or the dominator who goes into rage and yelling and screaming. Okay, so got that. We're not supposed to do that. And then it's like, well, what are we supposed to do? Well, this is a little less dramatic, of course, and I call this the Carlile solution strategy model. So here's the picture right here. You can see that just a little bit. And download it and print it out if you want to read along with me, or ask me any questions about this. So we have a comment. What if I have characteristics from all of these? Well, then I would say you're pretty human. But you've probably not been schooled in how to get problems solved. And that's what's next. And the truth is, all of us, we have all of these abilities, all of these ploys, games, manipulative tantrums. And if our parents don't socialize us to solve problems, and that they respond to these manipulative ploys, then guess what? We assume, and correctly so, that that's how we get what we want. It doesn't work with civilized or intelligent company very well. So the let's look at what to do instead. So if you can, print this out for yourself. So we're going to look at number one, the caretaker. This is the pleaser. And so let me just read you this little paragraph about being emotionally intelligent with the 5 abilities for problem solving. So problem solvers, rather than games people play. People who handle their problems and frustrations well have the ability to remain thoughtful rather than emotional. And remember, the emotional brain is what we call the midbrain. It's in the middle of the head, and it's also called the mammalian brain. So mammals have this brain, and it's where our feelings lie. So it's more primitive than the cerebral cortex or the thinking brain, which is the human brain. So we solve problems with our intelligence. And if our emotions get involved, particularly the ones that we've just been talking about where we use them to throw tantrums, well, then we're probably not going to be very good problem solvers. So, people who handle their problems and frustrations well have the ability to remain thoughtful rather than emotional. And that means strategic with your thinking and your intelligence. They can work alone as a leader or in partnership without allowing their feelings to get in the way. We're going to have feelings about whatever we care about. And if we use them as an instrument to manipulate, they're going to be getting in the way of being productive, successful, and having good relationships. Partners in intelligent problem solving can create a resolution together. They can agree respectfully to disagree, or they can accept conditional agreement, which means I will agree with you on the condition that you don't force me to see your way. I'll agree to look at your solution or your way respectfully. People who are problem solvers and emotionally intelligent, which means they are masters of emotional self-regulation. They can say, you might be right. They can say, or I understand what you mean. Or if I were in shoes, I'd feel, if I were in your shoes, I might feel the same way. Now, we all know that people come to their beliefs for reasons that they believe are the best reasons. And I will never forget a teacher I had many, many years ago reminding me, you can't know the journey of another person. You can't know their hardships. You can't know their hurts. Like, you can't know the wounds that they carry with them. You can't know what has been visited upon them. So respect people as they are, knowing that how they got that way is the best that they were able to do. And that means that when we disagree, you can say, I understand what you mean. Doesn't mean that you have to agree with them, but respectfully to understand them, etc. So, emotionally intelligent people who are emotionally self-regulated also have the wisdom to know that disparate views can be enriching, and they can open the doors to innovative and useful awareness or options that they may not otherwise have considered. Those who have emotional intelligence don't feel like victims because they avoid trying to control others, and they focus on what they can do themselves. Which means you're not a victim because you're figuring out, well, what is it that I can do? What's my freedom? What's my next step? What's my part? What's my responsibility? And immediately you're no longer a victim because you're looking for somewhere to move to. Anytime you want to ask a question, pipe right up. Okay. Which of the 5 abilities do you believe you need to develop? So these are the methods that get you into being emotionally intelligent and a problem solver. And you're not a victim anymore. And you are honest. Not brutally honest, but intelligently honest, wisely honest, honest with respect. Confident, knowing who you are, what you believe in, and not having to make anybody else believe the way you do. Being self-regulated, which means knowing yourself, listening to your feelings, listening to your thoughts, and deciding, okay, what is the best bet here? What is the best thing for me to say or do, regardless of how my emotions are stirred up? Those of us who are emotionally intelligent are reasonable. We're going to look at what is reasonable, logical, decent, honest, respectful, and we're fair. You know, we're gonna listen, and we're going to speak, and we're going to make sure that everybody gets listened to and everybody gets a chance to speak. So, this is the emotionally intelligent person and how they handle themselves. Instead of being the caretaker, the pleaser, the doormat, the one that will do anything to manipulate somebody else to get what they want, this person becomes the helper, a real helper. They are willing to serve, and they can create partnerships without compromising their own needs. Sometimes through leadership. You know, sometimes you're helping through leadership. Sometimes you're helping on a team. Sometimes you're helping by comforting. But a helper doesn't compromise their own need. The helper is responsible, respectful, honest, and empowers others to contribute to solutions by letting them help too. Isn't that reasonable? So if you have any questions, just type them, chime in. Then, instead of being a martyr, the person who takes all the guilt and whines about it and refuses solutions, instead we have the problem solver, a person who doesn't whine, but a person who gets themselves informed. So the problem solver listens to the information, assembles the data, learns all sides of the question, so that instead of deciding on one solution, learn all sides, do even a little brainstorming. They help to think things through logically and to define the problem intelligently. They work together to find possible solutions agreeable to all parties and to create strategy and a plan of action. So instead of being a martyr, this person moves into being a problem solver. And I like to think about when I'm mentoring people or helping them when they have something to do in court, you know, with custody, with children, or with a divorce. And perhaps it's difficult. It's something that I would assist people to avoid at all costs, but sometimes that's the next step. And so I really sincerely appreciate our court system, where emotions, drama, manipulation, whining, all those tantrums that people throw have no validity in court. They want the data, they want the truth, they want what's intelligent and what's reasonable, and decisions are based on that, not whether somebody's yelling or screaming or whining or making insults. Okay, then we have, instead of the withdrawer, the person who shuts down and refuses to interact, refuses to talk, and just pouts quietly. The person who really, in very obvious ways, is passive-aggressive. instead of being passive-aggressive, instead of withdrawing and shutting down, this person becomes a peacemaker, a real peacemaker, where they are communicative. They want to communicate. So the peacemaker calmly listens and withstands the intensity of engagement. Rather than shutting down, running away, withdrawing, stand calm and stay with the intensity of whatever engagement this is, because obviously in this situation there's a problem that needs to be solved. They communicate fully with honest opinions and attentive listening. They're not afraid to tell the truth. They're not afraid of somebody disagreeing. They're not afraid of getting their feelings hurt. They're not afraid of somebody else's irritation. They stand and become truly, in the deepest sense, tolerant and forbearant, where they can forbear whatever pressuring there is, not withdrawing in any way, but staying present. They participate without defense, without judgment, and in discussing problems and in formulating solutions. They engage rather than withdraw. They communicate rather than pout. So that's the third way of solving problems rather than using a tantrum. Okay. The fourth way of solving problems, instead of being the person who insults and hates and plans revenge and points the finger and says it's all their fault, this person then becomes the respecter. So instead of being insulting, they become respectful and responsible. They're respectful of others and their beliefs. They're open-minded, they're confident, willing, accountable, and honorable. They stay with that which is right, good, and true. They use information, their own patience, and wisdom to evaluate with fairness. If possible, they work with others to implement solutions. They stay responsible. Now, it doesn't sound quite as dramatic or as much a drama as those people who use controlling defense patterns or throw tantrums, but this person really solves problems. It's kind of nice to be around. Okay, and then instead of the person who goes into rage and the typical temper tantrum that we think of, which is yelling and screaming and breaking things or being insulting, this person becomes an achiever. They've got a lot of energy, a lot of intensity, a lot of expressiveness. So we want to use all of that to make something happen. So this person then becomes an achiever who is decisive and intelligent rather than out of control with all that aggressive energy. Let's move that aggressive energy into making something constructive happen and solve the problem. So the achiever sees the big picture, doesn't get involved in the minutia or dragging on this one thing, but see the whole picture like a leader would. They take leadership with self-regulated, calm, and energetic willingness to take action. Notice that seems in some ways to be a paradox, but if you're calm and you're willing and connected with all that action energy, then it doesn't, that action energy, that power is wielded only when it's going to be constructive, not manipulative. The achiever can bring together and facilitate a team or a partnership in choosing the best options for all the people involved. They plan and implement constructive action. And someone typed, but how do you really change yourself to have these qualities? That's the question, isn't it? It is hard to really change yourself, even though you know what your weaknesses are. Isn't that the truth? Why do you think I'm teaching this? Because, first of all, we need to know what it is that we do and what we want to do instead. So we want to know where we're coming from and where we're going to. Now, what you're asking for is exactly the next step. It's the methods. And so that segues me into the third download for tonight, which is the self-soothing handout. So I don't know if you've been able to print that out for yourself or not, but it's 4 pages. This is my nuggets, my nut meats. Bottom line, the first thing we need to do when we want to self-regulate means we want to take care of ourselves. So self-regulation means I know myself and I make decisions about what I not only say and do, but more importantly and previously, make decisions about what I think. Make decisions about what I think about. Now, I think that this is the point, the true point of all the points, the true point of power. And you've probably heard that concept of the observer or the witness, where, and I like to think of it as you're up there in the corner of the room, kind of like in one of those video cameras that's watching the room. When you can put your mind in that place of observing yourself, that point you have the power to decide. If you watch yourself and you see yourself doing something, you can say, I can see that this is what I'm thinking, and I need to think something differently. That point, I think, is the true and the ultimate point of pure power, where we decide. Rather than just going off on old habits or old patterns, old beliefs, or impulses or feelings, especially anger, we watch what we're thinking, saying, and doing, and we say, I think that I want to do that instead. That's the point of power. And if you think about this in the larger picture, all you need to do is look at me, look at yourself, look at anyone, and what their life looks like. And you'll know immediately what they've been thinking about. Now, you're looking at me, and right there, you're looking behind me. I've been having books all my life, which means I've been thinking about reading books. I've been thinking about what other people say. Some of it I agree with, some of it I don't agree with. And I try to pick the best. And then I try to pick the best in terms of what I think, feel, and say. So this handout is self-mastery and self-regulation, emotions management methods. So if you don't get into those emotional states of wanting to just be impulsive with how you're feeling because you're feeling so strongly, if you self-observe those emotional states, then you have the choice in terms of what you're going to do, what you're going to think next, what you're going to say next. So if ordinarily you are a pleaser and you get depressed, notice it and say, I can see I'm depressed. What am I going to do? I can see I'm whining. What am I going to do instead? I can see that I'm pouting and refusing to talk. What am I going to do instead? I can see that I'm just obsessing with hatred about something. What am I going to do instead? I can see that I really want to hit somebody or throw something or throw out an insult. What am I going to do instead? So that's the biggest place of power, and that's the biggest step for you to take. Now, we know, as you said, change is difficult. And that means that, he said, it's really hard to change yourself, even though you know what your weaknesses are. Yes. So the first thing is to practice paying attention to yourself. Remember in one of the previous talks, I defined love as paying attention. So the first thing we want to do in terms of methods of moving from being in the victim mode where we use tantrums into being a problem solver who uses their intelligence is to know ourselves and to take care of ourselves. So this then, self-management, self-regulation means, number one, I need to take care of me. And that may mean that I don't take good enough care of myself and I work all the time. It may mean that I'm way too lazy and indulgent and I take care of myself in ways that really don't benefit me very much and maybe in the end cost me something. So what we want is to take care of ourselves intelligently and maturely. So on this introductory page, there are 3 pages, lists of cool stuff, choices. Maybe you haven't thought of these as ways to manage your feelings, to create emotional intelligence, but that's what this list is. It's how to take care of yourself so that you can self-regulate. You decide. And if you decide for the good stuff first, it displaces all the stuff that doesn't work. So that's the easy way. Take care of yourself first, and you're so busy doing the right things that the wrong things are a waste of time. And actually, when you think about it, if you really think about this, all that drama and throwing tantrums and emotionalism really is kind of boring. Maybe it's loud or maybe it's intense, but it really is kind of boring or unpleasant. So self-mastery and self-regulation, there are 3 parts here. Number 1, manage your impulsive feelings. That means watch yourself. So number 1 on my list, I say anger is not a hammer, which means we don't use anger on something to force it, to punish it, to manipulate it. Anger is not a hammer to be used on someone. It's power to change something for the better. So I think of anger. Anger is not smart. Anger is not heartfelt. Anger is just pure energy. Think about my favorite metaphor for power, which is pure power. It's easy to think about it as like electricity, yes, but think about water. Think how water is just everywhere. Sometimes it's very calm, like if you see a beautifully placid, perfectly still lake full of all that water, and it's absolutely at peace. Then think about how the water runs out of the lake and runs into the lake. There's probably a creek or a river where the water is very much moving, and it moves around the rocks, it moves around the corners. It molds itself to where it goes. And as it goes, it probably polishes stones off little by little by little. It's the power that it can actually have that kind of an influence. We've all seen those great archaeological wonders that have been polished by water, especially in caves. And then think about how water evaporates and becomes a gas, like in a steam engine, where the steam then expands and fuels a power plant or a locomotive or something. Then think about how water just completely evaporates and goes into the air, and then sooner or later becomes clouds and rain, and then falls as rain, and the action energy of the raindrops falling to nourish the planet. Then think about how we as human beings choose to use the power of water. It's one of the greatest powers on the planet Earth. When you've built a dam and you have the knowledge to create turbine engines that create electricity to power anything in the world. So if we build a dam and we hold the water, we hold it and don't allow it to move over the dam just when we decide. So, and you know that there are dozens of more metaphors of how water is power. Just think about Niagara Falls or a waterfall, how the water falls and the power of that. So now, that's my favorite metaphor for human power, and anger is pure power. Anger can be the quiet, steely power when you see somebody's eyes very, very focused and intense and very angry, but the person's demeanor, the person's body doesn't move. Absolutely still. But the power is there. The power of the anger is there. It's held. Then the power of anger that is held behind a dam. It's a lot of anger, frustrated about something very big, something that takes a great deal of energy or time or intelligence or plans. You know, the anger that we have about how some of our children just don't get to graduate from school. And all the energy that we have, all the anger and frustration that that's not right, that's now being focused into improving our schools, improving our teaching methods. So think about anger as that power that you can use any way you decide to use it, just like how water can be used. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to interrupt me at any time. I'll keep going. So, manage your impulsive feelings. Anger is not a hammer to be used on someone. It's power to change something for the better. Being a doormat or a bully lets you stay a victim, or tail wagging and attacking is uncouth, or, you know, sometimes that's just what untrained critters or dogs do. Being a doormat, wagging your tail. Oh, what can I do to help you? What can I do to please you? What can I do to be nice to you? Which, you know, it's like not really emotionally intelligent and not looking at solving a problem. Or attacking, just with rage or anger, it's uncouth. Being a bully doesn't work. Sometimes it works for the interim. Sure doesn't work in the long run or for something that's really worthy. And tears, when we cry, being emotionally intelligent, tears are sacred. Treat them tenderly, unless you find yourself whining, because whining with tears, people who cry and cry and cry, and they just cry and whine and cry and whine, that's again one of those tantrums. And that crying is boring and ineffectual. But tears usually, listen to yourself with kindness and empathy and intelligence, and find where those tears from your heart are coming from. I think of them as sacred because they only come when we care about something, when we sincerely care about something. And then the fourth thing about managing your impulsive feelings is healthy humor is not cynical. And I know some people are masters at using humor to manipulate or to avoid or to dance around or to not, or when they feel uncomfortable, they sidestep and they avoid being sincere. Okay, then we want to manage our distressing emotions. So first we manage impulsive feelings, we want to manage distressing emotions, and we want to stay positive. So manage distressing emotions. Denial or repression of feelings usually has a physical and a mental cost. So we want to connect with the heart, be heartfelt, and know what to do with them. Repression of our feelings can cause unhealthy levels of stress, can also impair our thinking, and it can hamper our intellectual performance and interfere with smooth social interactions. So we want to know what to do with our feelings, and that usually means crying or catharsis. And usually you want to do it by yourself. Sometimes you have a shoulder to cry on or somebody to vent to, but usually the most thoughtful way to cry and grieve and to release in catharsis is for yourself, by yourself. Just like if you have to explode in anger, for yourself, by yourself. Anger, sadness, guilt, and fear can be sources of creativity, energy, and connectedness, like my metaphor about the water. Deep feelings arise from caring about something. When we soothe ourselves, emotions can motivate learning and innovation. So we want to cry and get catharsis, and then we want to soothe ourselves and use that energy whatever it is that we're caring about, for taking care of ourselves or taking care of the problem that's causing us to feel deeply or passionately. Okay. Resilience, bouncing back. Resilience can be thriving on stress in the sense that we use eustress instead of distress. So I'm going to type that. Oh, someone says, I cry all the time with arguments. How do I control my crying? I have tried to stop but can't. Usually that means you're feeling like a victim. Usually that means you're feeling like you don't have a choice. Usually that means that you're feeling hopeless. Or it means you're so angry about something and yet you can't get what you want, get what you need. So that's you, and you said, and these are with my husband. Well, your husband is probably the place where you have the deepest feelings. The man you picked out of all the men in the world to love, which means you really want to love him and you want to be loved by him. And arguments are the opposite of that. Arguments means you're enemies. Arguments means that you're not listening, you're not respecting, you're not really either one of you being understood. So when we have patterns in relationships, especially in our marriages or our intimate relationships, when we have patterns of arguments, it's completely against what we want. And those patterns of arguments usually end up being fighting. And it's not okay. It's not okay for us to argue or to fight in a marriage. That's the opposite of solving the problem. So one of the things I say is that it only takes one person to stop an argument. But you can stop arguing and fighting. That still means that there's something that the two of you have to solve, something that the two of you are in disagreement about or in misunderstanding about. And that means learning new ways to communicate, new ways to solve problems. And one of the first things that I love that helps us in marriage or in relationships to start to be intelligent rather than emotional is to learn about the daily dialogue and to learn about marriage meetings. Now, if we use the daily dialogue, I'm going to type that here. If we use the daily dialogue, that means we share 5 things every day. And if you want me to email you the daily dialogue, what I'll do is I'll have it as my download next week, and you can get it then. But if you email me, I'll send it to you. I'm just going to make myself a note. So that next week I'll put it as a download. But the daily dialogue is talking every day, admiring something about each other, talking about puzzles, talking about wishes, hopes, and dreams, talking about what you're confused about. And it includes at the end a complaint with a request for change. We need to be able to complain and request change quietly and intelligently and be heard. And so this is a structure that helps us stay, what I call stay clean every day, so that arguments, fights, and disagreements that never get resolved don't build up. Thanks. I will email you. Good. Please do, dear. There are lots of elements that are involved when couples fight. It's not okay. It breaks down your marriage. It breaks down your communication, your loving friendship that you need more than anything. So all of these programs that I've been broadcasting, they all have to do with communication and preventing fights, preventing arguments. So I hope that these speak to you in your language, because it's hard for me to know how to assist you or what tools you need unless I have more data. She says, but I thought that arguments are a normal part of marriage. No, they're not. Arguments are not normal. Arguments come from people who don't know how to communicate. And frankly, you probably don't see many people who really do know how to communicate. And if you watch movies and TV and soap operas and such, those are dramatized. They're fantasies, they're dramas, they're stories. And they're created to be dynamic and passionate and energetic so that they're entertaining. When people are kind and civil and connected in a relationship, sometimes the only thing you see, like I saw in my couples communication class in my office last night, was this two who were fighting and who were talking about divorce a year ago. Now when they look each other, it's like, it's adoration. It's gentle, quiet, soft messages of, I love you with my eyes. They don't even have to say anything. No, arguments are not quote unquote normal. Arguments are not what intelligent people do, unless they don't know what to do with their complaints or their differences or their disagreements or the things that trouble them. And it could be, and you know this, it could be anything from how you parent, how you handle your money, your religion, your sex life, just what kind of coffee you want in the morning. We can argue about anything, but no, it's not what people who are knowledgeable about intimacy and communication and a great marriage, that's not what we do. It's disrespectful. I don't argue with Jack. Sometimes we have a heated discussion, but I don't try to change him to my way of view. The heated discussion comes as kind of like a debate, or it's because I haven't been able to articulate what I want to say so that he's understanding me correctly. That's usually when we have some kind of a back and forth. We're just trying to understand each other. And there's a misunderstanding there. But we don't argue. It's disrespectful. That's the last thing that I would do to the men that I love. So thank you so much for asking that. Okay, let me see here. Bouncing back. Oh, I wanted to share this with you. Eustress versus distress. Stress causes, as you know, distress, pressure, depression, affects your physical health, affects your attitude, affects your intelligence, affects everything. But there's also the concept that if we don't have enough eustress meaning from the root euphoria, and euphoria means joy, happiness, fun, excitement, novelties. If we don't have enough of that good stuff, which is stressful because it quickens us, it takes our energy, and I don't know about you, but when I get excited, I move faster, which means there's a little stress on my system, but it keeps me fueled and alive. So sometimes we want to have enough eustress in our life. If we don't have enough eustress, then life can be depressing or boring or discouraging or disappointing. And sometimes in marriages that have been around for a while, we don't have enough eustress. We don't have enough fun. We don't have enough novelty. We don't have enough excitement. Not yelling and screaming, but just kind of a sparkle in the eye and a delight about something. And then the last part is stay positive. Don't be a BMW. You know what a BMW is? I use this sometimes in corporate talks. A BMW is somebody that does nothing but bitch, moan, and whine. So everybody gets a laugh out of that. Bitching, moaning, and whining goes nowhere. It's emotionally manipulative, usually from some sort of martyr. So watch yourself. It's a negative attitude that just brings you down even farther. Criticism and judgment are threatening, and they inspire defensiveness and dishonesty. Remember, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I talked about I'm really not invested in what they call constructive criticism, because criticism right at the get-go is judgmental and a put down. So what we want, a better choice, is locating methods of improvement. Okay, this is not working, so what do we need to do to improve it? What do we need to do to solve the problem? Attitude is a choice. And I know sometimes it'd be nice to tell people, we choose to have a better attitude, and sometimes we're pretty stubborn and married to our bad attitude, because there's sometimes a part of us that says, well, darn it, I have a right to be stubborn right now. I have a right to have a bad attitude right now. Well, people who are emotionally intelligent figure their way out of that one, because nobody's going to do it for you. So how do you improve your attitude? I know some people are very responsive to music, and it's like a real quick lift to your attitude, so you get yourself out of anything that's dark or depressing or grouchy. So this is about taking care of yourself. Also, letting go of control and clearing out resistance means learning to be good at apologies and forgiveness. So sometimes our bad attitude comes from we need to take responsibility and apologize for what our part is, and to forgive the other person for whatever it was that was their part. Sometimes we need to forgive even when they don't apologize. Now, in a long-term relationship, whether it's a friendship or a marriage, we do need to make restitution or apologize and get forgiveness. And that's one of the ways we stay positive. And then calm your thoughts and think clearly under pressure. There are some people who it's like, oh my God, oh dear, which means under pressure, you're letting yourself get hectic, emotional, frantic, and not thinking about what do I do. And that's really deciding to behave like an adult and deciding to not be a victim. So then the last 3 pages are lists of things that you might use. You know, it's like maybe out of this list, there are only 2 things that you need. Recently, I was working with a couple, and they were having a pretty heavy conflict. They do get out of control sometimes. They're learning to communicate better, where they call names or they get angry and they yell. And one of the, we're working on solving these problems. One of the points for the husband was, he said, on my way home from work, and he is a hard worker, he works too hard. He's tired, he's hot, he's hungry, he just wants to relax, and he doesn't want to communicate because he has to communicate all day long with the people he manages. And it's not always pleasant. So when his wife calls him, he's grouchy, he's stubborn, he's irritable, he doesn't want to talk to her, he wants her to lay off him. And so one of the things that we looked at for him is that counter to his regular pattern of overwork is for him to leave work 15 minutes early before he picks up the kids, and to do the things that he needs to take care of himself, so that he isn't just feeling stuck in this bad attitude and feeling tired, so that he takes an energy bar with him, or he stops somewhere and he gets a healthy snack of some sort, or he goes somewhere, you know, whether it's a park and a bench in the park where he can just sit for even 5 minutes and breathe, or in a museum just standing in front of a sculpture, or in a beautiful office building where it's quiet and cool and there's nobody bothering him, just so that he gets a place where he can get some quiet, He can get a little snack because he's hungry and tired, and he can get some just place where nobody's asking him for anything. He needs to be responsible for that. He needs to take care of himself so that when his wife calls, he doesn't have a bad attitude, and she can get the love she needs, and he can give the love that he wants to give her and get it right back from her. So, the other part of that is his wife was saying that when they first got married, the way she managed her feelings and her frustration, her anger, and her bad attitude was she'd get in her car and she'd go for a drive. And she may go for 20 minutes or even an hour. And that's what she did. And she always calmed herself down and then came back. But when they got married, he felt like she was walking out on him, and he refused for her to leave and to go for a drive. And what she now determined is, and now he understands, she's got to take care of herself. She's got to withdraw. She's got to get out, and she's got to do what she knows works for herself. And what she already knows works is going for a drive. Now, some people go for a drive. Some people just go out on the back porch and listen to the birds. Some people get out their journal book and do some writing. And then some people do any one or any mixture of this long list of things that I call a list for self-soothing, which means taking care of yourself, calming yourself down. And it's not just doing those things when you're upset or when you're feeling pressured, but doing things as a rule, an ordinary rule of course in your life, so that every week or every day you're taking care of yourself, doing something that relieves your energy and gives you a break and lifts you up. Does that make sense, you guys? If you want to manage your feelings so that you're emotionally intelligent, you don't throw tantrums, you want to keep yourself strong, calm, confident, feeling intelligent rather than like a victim. So you want to manage your impulsive feelings, you want to manage your distressing emotions, and you want to stay positive. And look at this, right on time, it's 9 o'clock. So if you don't have any more questions, I'm going to sign out, and I welcome you. I invite you to continue to chat and to talk with each other, whoever is listening. I love my viewers, and I love the questions that you ask me. It's a thrill to be able to interact with you, even though I don't know who you are or where you are. Thank you for tuning in to the Red Room tonight, and I'll see you next week, right here, same time, same place. Good night, everyone.